It's my pleasure to introduce you to Jeremy Hart. He's our special guest today. Jeremy is Director of ITSM, the program at First American Title. He's going to share his experiences, insights, and lessons learned regarding managing business and technology change and how current business and technology trends are impacting the way we work now and in the future. Welcome, Jeremy. Jeremy?
Good morning, Pete. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, sir.
Okay, my apologies. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Well, good. I'm glad you were able to join us. Today, Jeremy and I are going to be talking about a couple of things, namely 3 areas. Because Jeremy brings a special focus and a special career focus into this group, I thought it was important to focus on 3 things. Namely, Jeremy was instrumental in starting a program for ITSM at First American. And this IT service management program at First American helped to set a foundation in which First American was able to better manage technology and business change. And I thought it was important for us to learn more about what Jeremy did and the First American team did to establish a foundation, a maturity foundation, that enables First American to handle the business and technology changes in a much better fashion. The second area that I wanted to ask Jeremy about to share his experiences is this kind of rapid business and technology change and how First American himself and his team are working with handling the kind of latest trends that are going in there with respects to cloud computing, mobilization, consumerization of IT, social media knowledge, all of those. And then the third thing I'd like to have Jeremy discuss with us today is how important it is to manage your career like a business, and how important it is, especially in today's time with changing trends, directions, skills, technologies, how important it is for an IT professional to really look at their career and make sure they're managing according to the market demands that are out there, especially given the rapid change. So those are the 3 areas that we're going to be talking about today with Jeremy. So once again, Jeremy, welcome. Jeremy, I thought it was important to lay a foundation for us on your IT service management journey. So if you could you let the audience know kind of where First American was a way back in terms of its state that you had to figure out where you were and what you needed to change?
Sure, happy to. I think an important message to communicate to the folks on the call today is that it really is a journey. First American has been going down this path and actively moving down the road of ITSM and continuous improvement for the better part of a decade. So this is not a quick win type scenario, but there are certain things that we have found to be successful to help it keep moving forward. Back in about 2003, it was about 10 years ago, there was a dire need for us to institute change management just to get better control of our infrastructure. Infrastructure was characterized by instability, unreliability when we made changes, just unawareness when changes were being made. And it cost the business a significant amount of pain. And so that was one of the initial catalysts and drivers, and often that's a great place to get a foothold to advance best practices, is to find a problem that your business is facing and then seek to solve it or provide solutions in the family of best practices. And so that's what we did. We started with change management, and simply by getting changes under control, getting them flowing through a board that became aware of other groups that were making changes and had an eye of scrutiny, we were able to increase the stability of our primary production application by 55% in the first year, or reducing the downtime, I should say, by 55%. And at the same time, we pushed 35% more changes through that process. So it actually, it belied the claim that change management slows you down. We were actually able to track more change and have greater stability. So that was the first major win, and I think that's an important message too on your journey. Is whatever it is that you strike at, it's important that that initial item be one of success. So it can't really be a cookie cutter type approach to implementing the ITIL framework, if you will. Lots of groups have gone down that road, and they do it because ITIL says to do it. And I think that would be a big mistake for any group to do that. It's really important to be selective and apply the principles and practices in a way that's going to be meaningful for your organization, and that you can get that win. And that's what we were able to accomplish there. Once we had that underway, once we had a good change process, the focus started turning. Well, what else can the ITIL framework do for us? So we started making some very tentative steps toward configuration management. That's been a much longer road than what change management seemed to be a fairly quick win. But even that, we've been able to, in the last year, formalize a configuration management database and put some real discipline around the integration between change and configuration. The other elements that were somewhat in place years ago, back a decade ago, is that we did have a service desk, but it wasn't a central service desk. It wasn't for the entire corporation. So we began going down the path of centralizing everything that was in that was going to our service desk, eliminating or kind of putting out of business some of these regional or divisional service desks, centralizing those, and that's been another significant effort and win for the organization. Is now there is we haven't quite got all of them rooted out, if you will, but for the most part there is a single stop shop for IT support, and that is our service desk today. So the ability to get service, either reporting an incident or a service request, that began years ago, and now we have a formal service catalog, and the incident process is very measurable. So we're able to continue to make improvements and to understand where there are deficiencies in either the delivery, the fulfillment, resolution of the services that we're providing. So a couple of other areas that we endeavored to make strides on, and maybe here's a lessons learned. There's always a benefit for your critical applications on IT service continuity. We've made some steps down that road and have a couple of our key applications for the business that do have full applications, the ability to swing to an alternate site. So probably a warm site is the best way to describe that. But honestly, again, the biggest driver that we have found to be successful is, unfortunately, pain or problems. There's where you get the most momentum, or we have. And so we've had a fairly stable world, and so while we have those plans in place, we'd like to see them continue to mature. But we do have the foundation of that, and now we're looking to expand that. As far as our organization, when you think about the journey of an ITSM, it started as an individual, started as me, as the change manager. Now we have a team of about 12 people that includes the tool. We own the tool that we're using, the service management tool, and the developers who are configuring that, which I think is another key lessons learned. I think that's the best practice from the ITIL books as well, is that the process owners really need to have control of the ability to automate and improve the process through the tool. So that's in place. And just recently, our organization, we've demonstrated enough value that they've centralized all of the process owners onto an ITSM team, and that's the group that I'm now leading. So we have formal full-time equivalents or employees that cover incident, service request, change, configuration, problem, and knowledge management. So all of those have been kind of going based on the girder that we founded back 10 years ago of change management. We've been building on these other processes, and now there's a formal organization that is accountable for this across the enterprise. It's not just infrastructure. It's not just application. We've had that challenge, too, of bouncing back and forth between where does this really apply. But now that's in place for the entire corporation.
That's
awesome. Kind of
awesome.
a bit of a snapshot. Yeah.
And I know you talked about the business relevancy and value of ITIL and not to do things just for ITIL's sake. But you have a pretty extensive background in ITIL as well, and you're well certified in it, correct?
Yeah, back in 2003, our CIO sent me to the ITSMF conference, and I got foundation certified there, and the message there resonated with me, and so that's what I brought back with me and started putting together a training plan. I felt like the whole organization, or many more, needed to be trained. Of course, the big obstacle to that is the funding. So then I started thinking down the path, well, what if I trained it? What if I became a certified instructor? So I figured out what the path was to do that, and ultimately at the time you had to become a service manager in the version 2 model, so I became a service manager. I wrote the 2 3-hour essay exams and was able to clear that hurdle, and then I did the bridge course to the ITIL expert and have been teaching the foundation class within the corporation probably for the last 6 years, 7 years. And between the First American and our sister company, CoreLogic, I probably put nearly 500 people through the ITIL Foundation training. And I don't think that was an insignificant factor in the awareness and the recognition of which direction to go. So just by virtue of the fact that we were able to get that word out and communicate that basic message. Of course, when you walk away from the foundation training, as soon as people clear their certification, they may lose or forget a percentage of it, but there's always that foundation to go back to. And that common language, it's touted in the foundation training as a significant part of organization change, but I've seen it for real. People see me, and they were in my class years ago, and they're now in far-flung parts of the company, and they recognize me as the ITIL guy. So it makes an impression, that investment that you make in employees, and furthermore, not only is it an investment in them as an employee to grow them, resume building, if you will, but it also gives that common foundation that whenever there's an issue, we always have a touchstone, some place to go and say, okay, what does the best practice say, and then what can we take from that and put in place in the company?
Well, a couple of things I just wanted to take away as a lesson for me on your story there, that foundational story of where you were. One is find a problem or a crisis and that's impacting the business and look to solve it, but look to solve it with some key measurements in place, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you can't, and again, that's another key thing is that if you don't baseline, you can't really demonstrate the extent of the value you've brought. Fortunately, we had some folks in who helped us to do just that, benchmark where we were, so that after that first year, we could confidently communicate what I thought was astounding results.
Yeah.
In the way of 55% reduction in downtime minutes. That's serious money. That's business speak right there. People listen when you say that, and you can continue to get support. So absolutely.
So let me take away from this slide from just a second, and you talked about the maturity model and just kind of having a framework for that. And I remember you discussing with me that there was just not one model that you could relate to all stakeholders and have them understand or see the value in what you were doing. So you tied together a number of models, maturity models, namely the Gartner one, the CMMI maturity model, the Help Desk Institute maturity model, and then another model that was particular to First American. Can you just share with us how you kind of put these all together to get the stakeholders to see what your message was in terms of a business, IT, and kind of relevant maturity model here?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to speak the message of where we were and where we wanted to go in a way that would resonate with a wide audience. And as you pointed out, Pete, there was no one of these frameworks that really covered the whole picture or told the whole story. And so we kind of just, like you said, had to take a cross-section of all of them, overlay them like you see here. And the most simple and basic was one that our VP of IT Operations, a vision that he set for our organization, which you see at the bottom, and then to relate that to other well-known frameworks or models. But from the migration of an IT organization, he put it in very simple terms that you start out as an order taker. When you do that well, you're recognized as a business partner, and if you can deliver on the business partner role, then you have the opportunity to become a trusted advisor. And there is no shortcut across that path. There is no streamlined fast track to get there. It really is a business-driven model that unless we do the basics well initially, no matter how much we may communicate it, state it, document it, that we are a business partner, it just isn't the case. The business doesn't view us that way if we can't keep basic things stable and available for them. And so taking that as the base message and then layering on the other models for the respective areas, whether it's development or infrastructure or a service desk, that seemed to be able to communicate the message more clearly. Now they saw in the simple terms what needed to happen, and then they could relate it to these other frameworks that they've heard or worked with in the past.
And I've seen that VP speak, and I love the way he talks about the trusted advisor role, and after you've done the road work, and he does talk about the detail, planning the work and working the plan, and there's no shortcuts to success in that way. There's just a lot of hard work, but you have to keep focus and making sure that you're getting where you want to be. The other thing was just, when you've arrived on the trusted advisor role, when the business partners call you and ask your advice before making a decision on their own, and that was the place he wanted to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so some of the things that we have done, we can't. I guess here's the other message: is you can't make any assumptions as to where you are. You have to assume you're at the order taker until the business behavior changes, until they start viewing you as a business partner, which is indicative of some of the things you just talked about, Pete, right? Where you're at least allowed into discussions and meetings dealing with the forecast, right? Then you start becoming that business partner. So what we did to either validate, our hope was that we were more than just an order taker, but how do you prove that? How do you demonstrate that? Well, we had to measure it. We had to start looking at how we were doing operationally, and the fact is, before a year ago, before we implemented our new service management tool, we did very little metrics or measurings around what we were doing on a day-to-day basis, other than total ticket or volume count, what was open, what was closed. We didn't really have SLAs in place. We didn't have any way to measure that. So that was one of the key things that we transitioned into our new tool. We knew that we were not simply going to transplant our old practices into our new tool set, and I don't think anybody thinks that's a good idea. So when we moved into the new framework, that was one of the things that we had keenly in mind, was how are we going to measure this? How are we going to demonstrate, one, set an expectation of when the customer should expect to receive this service, and then two, measure ourselves against that delivery. And that all sounds very fundamental, but not having practiced it before, we really didn't have that organizational capability in place. So it's taken us a little while to get that established. But in August of last year, what we did, which I thought was a significant step forward in this effort, was we established a daily operations meeting where we're reviewing just that. So we started with, when I say just that, we were reviewing the daily performance of parts of our organization. We started with our groups that dealt with our end users and brought in 5 or 6 different groups on a daily meeting. It was about 15 minutes long. And all we did was we reviewed the current incident backlog, looked at the aging of incidents a little bit, looked at ones that were a little old, and just asked the question, what's the status of these, of the managers of those groups? Same thing with service requests. Service requests, we communicate through our service catalog. When the customer orders something, there's a certain delivery time frame. And we simply started asking, okay, these items are overdue. What's the status of them, managers? And the managers, obviously, with the spotlight of accountability shining on them, they started stepping up and they started coming to that daily meeting with the status instead of saying, oh, let me go get the status, I'll let you know. Recognize that this is not a hierarchical discussion. Those managers didn't report to me in any way, but because we were taking ownership of the process and the effectiveness of that process as the process owner group in ITSM, we simply took the implied authority and started holding them accountable for it, and they started responding accordingly. Within a very short period of time, the aged incidents were gone. We'd reduced the backlog significantly, and the exceptions, the situations where we're waiting on a vendor to provide us information, waiting on a vendor to provide us a device or equipment, or waiting on a customer's response who may have gone on vacation or are too busy during the business cycle to be responsive to their own request, we had a clear understanding of that the only things that were not getting fulfilled were those items that had exceptions, and we knew what those exceptions were. I should say the managers knew what those exceptions were. So something as simple as just a daily, very short meeting brought about a real clarity on how well are we taking the order? How well are we delivering on the expectations that we've set? Once we established that model with our end user group and saw the fairly dramatic reaction or response of virtually no backlog, a very quick turnover of incidents and service requests and nothing getting dropped, we caught on to that. Okay, this is something that we need to roll out to our entire organization. So then we began the process of extending that model, and we were concerned that, oh boy, this is going to end up being an hour meeting, and it's going to, some groups are going to be sitting there not doing anything. It's going to be the old change advisory board issue where, I don't really care about anything until it comes my turn. Well, we were worried about that, but for no reason. Now we have the entire IT organization on this 15-minute call, and understand that the only thing that we discuss are the exceptions. They're the things that have not been addressed. If there's not an update on a record, or that's basically it. Those are the only ones that we talk about. So the length of the meeting is entirely in the control of the managers. If they are managing their work and updating our customers, if there are delays, then it's not the subject of a discussion. Our discussions are still less than 15 minutes a day. And we've thrown in addition to the operational activities of incidents and service requests across the organization, we've thrown in a forecast of our changes that are forecast for the next 24 hours to give visibility to that audience of what's going to change, with a view, again, of being aware and of sharing accountability for the stability of our environment.
That's fantastic. I got to believe that the SLA adherence piece is one important scorecard kind of in the ITSM metric and reporting performance measures. I also heard that you have a customer satisfaction index as well. From other people in the organizations, you use the HDI CSI model, and you have a very good response rate. Almost 27 to 30% of your customers respond to these 5-question survey alerts, and that there's a little discipline, almost like the SLA meeting, around the CSI. When the management team gets an alert, either good scores or bad scores, the management is accountable for following up with the customer or for the agent to ensure that there's coaching if the agent didn't do a good job, or if there's a broken process, the management takes accountability for figuring out where the process is broken and making sure they take action to correct it. I love those 2 scorecards and the focus of accountability around that.
Yeah, and that's exactly the case, and all of that is confirmed to us, and just being frank, looking in the mirror and acknowledging what we see, is that we largely are order takers at this point. As much as we were hoping for a little bit higher on the scale, we may be inching toward the B of the business partner in some areas, but the fact is that it's unquestioned that the level of confidence that our customer community, which are internal employees for the most part, but their confidence is growing. They are looking to us because we are providing the solutions. We are providing a responsive service to them. So I've already seen the culture changing in the organization, and again, key drivers were put in place a process to measure it, hold them accountable.
Yeah, and I also understand you have some other scorecards that you're looking to put in place as well from a management accountability side, such as workload optimization to make sure that all the resources deployed in this service and support organization are being utilized on the right things, or right work, right people, right reasons. I also understand that you have some elements of cost effectiveness to make sure that the service and support organization is delivering cost-effective support. And then also just kind of looking at it from a teamwork side and a knowledge sharing. You've made the roads on knowledge management now and starting to build a knowledge culture, correct?
Yeah, that is true. Knowledge management has become a formal, or I should say a more formal, I don't want to oversell where we are. It's been acknowledged that we need to do a better job of managing our knowledge, and I don't think it's different than most organizations where most of the knowledge is in people's heads. And of course the big drawback to that is there are several. We're dependent upon individuals for the success of the corporation, which is a bad idea. And two, at any given time, that knowledge can walk right out the door, right? And so we've recognized the need for that, so we've invested in a framework, KCS as our framework, knowledge-centered support, and we're working to start capturing that knowledge as part of our culture. We're centralizing the repository for where that knowledge is and producing the metrics and reports around how well are we capturing knowledge. Not that, if we're capturing it or not, or how well we're using it. We're starting with, are we even capturing that knowledge? And so we're looking for that to be another catalyst. I think this leads a bit into the later parts of our discussion, Pete, about how the culture in an organization is changing based on how our consumers are changing, where self-service is becoming much more accepted, in fact, even desired by the user community. If I can do it myself, it's going to be faster, easier, and I'll do it at my convenience versus somebody else setting my schedule and the time frame for when something will get supported. And so I just, before, if we may be moving on to the later parts of the discussion, but before we do that, I was just going to say the only reason we can have discussions around this, in my opinion, around how to capitalize on things like self-service, how to get to the point of measuring cost effectiveness, and are we allocating our resources in the right parts of our support organization. The only way we can do that is because we've got that first piece kind of dialed in now. The fact that we can effectively manage the orders that we're given and deliver on that and continue to improve how well we're doing on that. But until we get past that discussion or issue, these other things are kind of nebulous. They're intangible. They're hard to get your hands on. So again, back to the basics. If you can take care of that, there's a number of other questions and issues that now become possibilities, real issues with real possibilities for solution. But like Cameron has always said, that's our VP of IT Ops. You got to do the work. You can't just jump to the end without doing the work.
Well, I really like the idea. I'm not sure where it came from, but I do like it. The fact that you have a wonderful service catalog portal up there where people could order their own types of products and services. And you realize that, just putting it up there wasn't good enough. Besides the education communication, you actually set up a service desk with a menu tree that when people wanted to order or request services, they would go to a special group. And that group was there to help train them and show them how easy it was to order it themselves, not necessarily do it for them. And even to support that, you made a series of videos, 2 or 3 minute videos, that were right on the service catalog front page to help instruct people on how easy it was for them to order it without having to call the help desk again.
Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up, Pete. We thought when we put in our service catalog, that was kind of the new concept for our business users. What? to be able to order something myself, like a cell phone or a PC for a new person coming in. You mean I can do that myself? I don't have to just tell somebody and hope that it happens. And so we thought it was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, that people will have that ability. It's kind of like Amazon.com. Just go and order your thing. We found that it caught our organization a little off guard, even though we communicated, we trained, we held webinars to let everybody know what was happening and provided some of the training. We didn't get the attraction that we thought we were going to initially. And so, yeah, there's a couple of initiatives that were put in place to try to supplement, or that's another thing that we're measuring, is the usage of the service catalog and how is that growing, the self-service part. We're using that as a key indicator of our success with that, because ultimately it results in call deflection from the service desk and just more efficient services being provided. So as you brought out, Pete, we set up a group that were intended to be the concierge, if you will, of the service catalog that you can access when you call into the service desk. It's just a hit 3 and you get to this concierge group that can show you how to most efficiently and effectively request the thing that you're trying to get requested. And the analogy that we drew from was when airports started transitioning over from counter service to the kiosks. When they first put the kiosks out there, where you basically self-service your check-in, people did not use them. They stayed in line because that's what they were used to doing. That's what they were used to doing. And so what the airports did is or the airlines did, is they took folks out from behind the counter and put them out at the kiosks, and they were inviting people from the line to come on over. Let me show you how to use this. And now, for anybody who travels frequently, you don't even dream of standing in line. You always are just going to go to the kiosk. It's so easy. And so that's the analogy that we drew on to set up this group that's a part of our service desk to be that group that says, hey, come on over here. We'll show you how to do this. And we're looking for that over time to shift the culture where people are just going to see that that's just a far easier approach than trying to call the service desk or even trying to, I guess that's the main thing, is to avoid the call and allow them, empower them to get to what they need.
I think that example you gave with the airlines and the kiosks, I think that fundamentally changed people's willingness to adopt self-service, the way it was handled. And I also think Amazon probably had a bit of a role in that as well. I just wanted to transition, Jeremy, to a point of change currently being faced by businesses and IT organizations right now, namely, and I want to tie it back to the maturity model as well, that there's so much business and technology change out there that if the business doesn't feel that you are a good order taker and doing that well, the discipline around that, or the opportunity to be a business partner and offer sound advice, and you have a trend going on in the organization that talks about mobilization, namely this right here. All of a sudden we have an outpour of consumerization around technology, bring your own device to work, people doing things on their mobile device that they would like to be able to do at work, social computing, smartphones, application access, and really people having ubiquitous data where they can access it anytime, anywhere without having to go through VPN or some of the IT control areas. We have that kind of underlying impact going on as well. We also have right now what I would call some things going on with the employees and customers around social knowledge, namely the new social knowledge worker. You have people now that are very comfortable with using text messaging, instant messaging, that they're using social media to conduct business and like that format. And that they want to be able to use these platforms to be able to work in. So you have those kind of trends going on, and then you come back to what I would call the risk of not being really good at order taking or not a business partner or a trusted advisor. Then we have a situation where we would have the business go rogue or shadow IT, where the IT is not willing to partner. They don't have the credibility or the relationship with the business to figure it out together. And now we have the business kind of going on its own, almost in a decentralized way. How is First American working to take advantage of their success, their maturity, and reach out to the different businesses through either business engagement, relationship, or business liaisons to help manage these technology and business trends today?
Yeah, that's a great topic, because every IT organization, I think, faces the traditional chasm. It's very easy to become disconnected, or I should say to stay disconnected. I think most IT organizations start disconnected from the business as far as what the business is ultimately trying to accomplish. We've seen that at First American, and unless there's an active effort to stay engaged, in other words, is keeping the basics going reliably, if you don't do that and then actively assert yourselves as an IT organization to be that partner, to request invite to those discussions where these challenges, opportunities are being evaluated, you'll never get there. You'll never have the solution that's really needed, and you won't have technology that meets a need. You'll simply have technology, and the balance of all of the variety, the radically changing technology out there, and the shiny things that everybody wants to go look at. There is a balance between being able to maintain that and sustain it on a corporate level and being responsive to the opportunity that presents. That is a big struggle, and that's where, again, becoming that business partner, that's the only way that is going to be well managed. So
I was on if I can, I was on a call the other day, and the IT group was explaining its projects to the business liaisons and some of the business managers. And the one project was about some business intelligence, database consolidation, et cetera, and after the gentleman finished, the IT gentleman, one of the business people asked the IT gentleman, what was the business value of the project? And really caught the IT gentleman by surprise. But I thought it was interesting now that the business was somewhat challenging IT to relate business value to the projects and prioritize them according to what they thought the business value was.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see more and more of that type of discussion happening. And I think you're right. Again, in our organization, I think our IT group is still a little flat-footed when it comes to responding to questions like, what's the ROI? Who's going to ultimately benefit from this effort? We've operated on a long time with assumptions that, yeah, this will have a return. And so that question is going to become commonplace. And we're just going to have to get better at being able to respond to that. Again, it goes back to the value formula from the ITIL framework. Is you have to be able to provide not just the features and functions, but the sustainability of this, and you need the capability to really manage it. It's been said that technology is not a differentiator. Everybody has it, so how can it be a differentiator? It's how well you manage the technology that is the differentiator today. And so the capability of our IT organization, we're growing. We still need to grow more, and I think that's indicative of most of the industry.
Excellent. I'd like to take you back to our initial slide so that you could maybe talk about these last two things. What has been over your career at First American your proudest moment or accomplishment?
Proudest moment. You know, I've got there are a lot of them, because I think in the context of the journey that we've taken, I think it's, you know, there are countless wins that we can point to, but I got to go back to that initial change management implementation. To me, that was the foundation. That was the foundation of where we are today, and that's why I speak to the fact that whatever it is you pick as if you're going initially with your ITIL implementation, please, please, please think it carefully out. Pick one that you can legitimately go to the business and demonstrate value on. If you're in a discussion at the end of a project and you're saying, hey, but we're ITIL aligned, and that's where the value comes from, you've lost the game. You've lost credibility, and your next initiative will be challenged all the more. You won't find more success, or it'll be certainly more of an uphill battle. So the fact that we were able to take a non-existent change process, and of course everybody loves change management, right? Yeah, right, bureaucracy, red tape, that's synonymous with that. But we put in place a process that avoided the bureaucracy that was perhaps others had felt in other previous change processes, 2 or 3 previous attempts, and brought the results that we talked about, that we could demonstrate, right? 35% more changes being processed demonstrated we weren't slowing it down, 55% reduction in the downtime hours for our critical applications. To me, that we can still hang our hat on that and say we have the ability to put this in well, to take process theory, if you will, and apply it in the organization. And the credibility that we got from that, one, it resonated with our CIO, who continues to support initiatives that are based on best practices in the ITIL framework. He's always been an advocate because of that initial win. And then as other folks have come into the organization who've heard of ITIL or gone down a similar path, they've just thrown in their lot with this effort, and the momentum has grown. It has continued to grow, and now it's hard to keep up with the demand. Folks are asking for how do they participate with the service catalog? How can they get their stuff into our new service management tool? And I get pinged on a regular basis. We're becoming a process consulting group within our IT organization. People want to know, well, how do I do this better? It has nothing to do with ITIL or anything else, but just the nature of improving process is what we do. And so we're asked, we're in high demand. That's why our team keeps growing. And so it's pretty exciting to be able to base our success on something that was so transformational back then, and it just continues on today. Sorry for that long-winded answer, but that's
all right. That's right. I'm going to keep you short on this one if I can. So, IT organizations tend to be a bit siloed. They also tend to be a bit comfortable in the way that they've done things in the past. Yet, we all know that they have to change. So, what would you offer in terms of advice to other IT organizations that need to transform their culture to be able to be ready to adapt and adopt this business and technology trend that's coming for them?
I could say that it depends on where the organization is, but again, something I'll point to is you got to have a common foundation. Everybody's got to be able to point to in the same direction. When you say where are we going, they got to at least point east and not have people pointing in the opposite directions. And that's where I communicated that get everybody on the same page from an ITIL perspective. Not that we've drunk the Kool-Aid for sure, but we're not so rigid on our implementation that it must be ITIL. Yes, we want to pull from ITIL framework the best that we can, but it's got to fit us too and where we are. So having a guiding framework to me is significant, and if you don't have that, everybody's going to be wandering in the wilderness trying to figure out what to do. So pick one, educate the organization, and then stick to it.
Excellent. Excellent advice. And then one more before we go. You've had a very blessed career in terms of your successes and your opportunities within First American. And so Andy Grove, former Intel CEO, wrote a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And one of the things that he always stresses to professionals is they need to continue to educate themselves to be prepared for what the business needs and where the market demand skills are. And what career advice would you offer to IT professionals out there?
Yeah, I think you may have already said it, but if we stop learning, that's it. Our careers have ended, whether we have a job or not. So it's vital that everybody continue to invest in themselves, ask your company to invest in you, to grow in a relevant way that supports the business needs. When that stops, the game is over. So keep growing yourselves. I think that's the significant thing, and what that implies, by implication, as you grow, you change, right? And as you become more resilient and ready to adopt to change, and that becomes an organizational culture, guess what? The organization is ready to adopt and change. So I think ultimately that's the resonating message of many of the leadership books today, is that change is inevitable. We have to be ready for it, and it starts with us as an individual. If individuals are not ready to change, we cannot expect our organization to do something we're not ready to do.
Agreed. And I look to the fourth bullet point there as my favorite. Read. Leaders are readers. Listen, travel, attend industry conferences, leave your comfort zone, volunteer, get picked for a cross-functional team, go to a class, but whatever, do something, and it'll be great for your career. Jeremy, I just wanted to thank you very much for being with us and sharing your journey, your success story, and some insights in terms of how we can help better manage business and technology change. Thank you again.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
And I'd like to thank our audience today for joining us on Pete Talks, a Thought Live production. Please let us know how we're doing. You could either phone or email or Twitter us and let us know what you think, what kind of topics you'd like for us to present next time. We're going to be working on our next schedule of events and next schedule of topics, so we'd like to hear from you on what you want to hear and maybe guest speakers you'd like to have on. So with that, have a great day, a great week, and thanks again for joining Pete Talks.